Hello, good morning, everyone. But today we want to go ahead and we will try to finish off chapter number 6 of optimization. So this is going to be the last lecture, not of optimization as a whole, but last lecture of chapter number 6. Okay, beta. Acha, let's start. So I hope you're practicing along with me, and in the last class, I had taught you some inequalities. You had gone ahead and done those inequalities also. Huh? Okay, let's start. So I want to begin today's lecture by teaching you about limit theorems. Okay. But what is a limit theorem? In order to understand limit theorem, we start with the first theorem, theorem number 1. And this theorem says that, let's say that Q is a function and Q is equal to A, V plus B, right? And let's say that I want to go ahead and I want to approach V to N. And then beta, what will I do? I will just go ahead and say, find the value of Q as V approaches N. ये मुझे निकालना है. तो मैं क्या कर सकती हूँ बेटा? I can say limit V approaches N and Q की जगह पे ना I can just replace this AV plus B. हाँ बेटा, तो ये हो जाएगा AV plus B. तो ये क्या हो जाएगा बेटा? A instead of V I can put N और B की जगह पे B ही. So the answer to this question will be A N plus B. एक example लेके देखते हैं. Let's take an example. So suppose I tell you that Q is equal to 5V plus 7. And I ask you find limit V approaching 2 for Q. तो क्या करोगे बेटा? Limit Q की जगह पे instead of Q you will write 5V plus 7 and V will approach 2. Then beta what will you do? Instead of V you will just put 2. तो क्या हो जाएगा? 5, 2 plus 7. So beta this will be 17. And that will be the answer to this question. क्या answer हो जाएगा इसका? 17. Right beta? Okay, let's take the next question now. So in the next question, let's suppose that we have the next theorem, theorem number 2. So in theorem number 2, I'm saying that beta Q it is a function of V and this is just B. It's a constant. ठीक है? तो अब वो बोल रहा है कि क्या होगा जब लिमिट V tends to N Q होगा. तो बेटा Q तो सिर्फ एक कांस्टेंट ही था, इसमें कोई V तो आ नहीं रहा है. सो V को कहीं पे भी लेकर जाओ, टेक एनी वैल्यू ऑफ V, ये फंक्शन की वैल्यू तो ये कांस्टेंट ही रहेगी ना. सो वी कैन जस्ट राइट दिस एज लिमिट V tends to N B and this will just give me B itself. Clear हुई ये बात? Right? Okay बेटा. Theorem number 3. In theorem number 3, what can we do? We can say that suppose Q is equal to V. Right beta? Q V के बराबर ही है. So now limit V tends to N. What will be the value of Q? तो बेटा Q तो V के बराबर ही है. So instead of Q I can just put V. So I will get limit V tends to N V. और जहां जहां V है वहां पे I have to replace it with N. So बेटा ये simply क्या हो जाएगा? N. So answer to this question will be N. ठीक है? अच्छा, let's take some question now. So suppose I tell you find limit V tends to 2Q when Q is given as V cube. ठीक है बेटा? तो देख लेते हैं. Q की वैल्यू क्या दी हुई है? V cube. So instead of Q I will put V cube. So what will I get? Limit V tends to 2 V cube. And then beta instead of V what will I put? I will put 2. So what will I get? 2 to the power 3. This will be 8. So the answer to this question will be 8. Clear? Okay. So now let's come to the next part and write down theorem involving two functions. So if I have two functions, how can we go ahead and how can we bring some theorems? ये हमें देखनी है, ठीक है बेटा? तो first theorem जो आती है हमारी वो sum and difference की आती है. So limit v tends to n q1 plus q2, right बेटा? So suppose मैंने आपको बोल दिया है कि limit v tends to n q1 gives you L. Limit v tends to n q2 gives you L2. तो बेटा इसमें क्या मैं क्या कर सकती हूँ? What can I do in this case? I can just open this up. So how can I open this up? I can say this will be limit v tends to n q1 plus limit v tends to n q2. इसको मैंने segregate कर दिया है. q1 को separate कर दिया and q2 को separate कर दिया. I've just separated it. बेटा इसकी value is already given to me as L1. इसकी value already given to me as L2. So I can just put an addition sign here. Similarly, if it was subtraction, तो ये subtract हो जाते, ये भी subtract हो जाते, and that is it. Is this clear to everyone? Okay. Now बेटा suppose multiplication का rule देखते हैं. So now this is again another theorem. Suppose I tell you limit q1 q2 and here beta I have taken v tends to n. So this can be written as limit v tends to n q1 into limit ना spread हो जाती है, limit distributes, तो इसके साथ अलग limit लग जाएगी और इसके साथ अलग, into limit v tends to n q2. And beta what is the value of this, by the way? This is given to me as L1 and that is given to me as L2. So beta just write that down. So this will be your L1 into L2. Clear हुई बात? अच्छा, now let's take one more theorem here. That theorem is for division. Same ही है, कुछ difference नहीं है. So if I say limit v tends to n q1 by q2, so beta you can just spread the limit and get limit v tends to n q1 upon limit v tends to n q2. So beta this part is given to me as L1 and this part it is given to me as L2. So it will be L1 by L2. Clear? Okay, I will give you some question, try to do them. So let's start. So you have to find limit v tends to 0, 1 plus v upon 2 plus v. So what did I teach you beta? That limit distributes. Distribute का क्या मतलब है? Distribute का मतलब ये हो गया that in case of limits, you can go ahead and apply it separately to the numerator and separately to the denominator. So apply कर देते हैं. So beta this is going to give you limit v tends to 0, 1 plus v upon limit v tends to 0, 2 plus v. So beta ये हो गया 1 plus, instead of v just put 0 upon 2 plus, instead of v just put 0. So beta this will be half. Clear? Okay. Now we want to do some limit of the polynomial. बहुत ही simple है. So example. Last theorem है बेटा, हाँ? So if I tell you that limit v tends to n a naught, this is a naught. Limit v tends to n a1 v. This is given as, तो v की जगह पे n लगा दोगे, a1 into n. Limit v tends to n a1 v square. तो बेटा v की जगह पे फिर n a लगा दोगे. Suppose this is a2. So it will be a2 n square. Like this it will happen. But now beta if I ask you कि एक function है q and q is a naught plus a1 v1 plus a2 v square. a1 v plus a2 v square. Now I'm asking you find limit v tends to n q. तो बेटा ये क्या हो जाएगा? Limit v tends to n and q की जगह पे ये पूरी चीज आ जाएगी. So a naught plus a1 v plus a2 v square. बेटा आई जस्ट टोल्ड यू लिमिट डिस्ट्रीब्यूट्स, तो इसके साथ अलग लग जाएगी, अलग लग जाएगी, अलग लग जाएगी. सो लिमिट v टेंड्स टू n a नॉट प्लस लिमिट v टेंड्स टू n a1v प्लस लिमिट v टेंड्स टू n a2v स्क्वायर. एंड बेटा इसकी वैल्यूज तो मैंने पहले ही सिखा दी है, a नॉट a1 n a2 n स्क्वायर. सो दिस विल बी a नॉट a1 n प्लस a2 n स्क्वायर. तो हमें पॉलिनोमियल की भी लिमिट मिल गई. वी हैव बीन एबल टू गेट द लिमिट ऑफ द पॉलिनोमियल ऑल्सो. इज दिस क्लियर? ओके, so beta this is the concept of the theorems of the limits that we have just now ended. Now I want to talk about something else which is called as continuity and differentiability of the function. So please लिख लो continuity and differentiability of the function. So beta we have learned enough about limits. Limits के बारे में हमने सब कुछ पढ़ लिया है. इन्हीं limits से, from these limits, you can find out the definition of continuity. Suppose I tell you that I have a function q and this is a function. Suppose ये जो q है, q is a function of v. ठीक है? And beta when v tends to n, limit v tends to n, तो देखो ध्यान से समझो जरा. So limit v tends to n, q में हम क्या करेंगे? Instead of v I will put n ना, so I will get g of n. ये मेरे को मिल जाता है. So it is said to be a continuous function at n when you go ahead and get this value. अगर यही value निकल के आती है, then it is said to be a continuous function. अभी समझेंगे, धीरे धीरे सब आएगा समझ में. When I will do some questions. हाँ, अच्छा, पहले कुछ definitions लिख लेते हैं, then things will seem easier. इसीलिए it is very important to understand that when I talk about n, then beta n must be in the domain of the function. ये पहली चीज है. Secondly, the function must have a limit. मतलब कि when limit v tends to n q करे, जो हमारा g of n आ रहा है, it must exist. So the limit must exist. And third, बेटा जो हम लिमिट निकालते हैं, this limit must be equal to the value. जो हम जब v की वैल्यू n की जगह पुट करते हैं, the limit must be equal to the value. So there are three things that must be satisfied. और इन सब के बारे में मैं अभी आराम से बात करूंगी. Don't panic. Don't think कि ये क्या है, ये कुछ समझ नहीं आ रहा. No, don't worry. अभी I'm just trying to define something for you. So अभी हम बस definition लिख रहे हैं. We're just writing the definition. Nothing to worry. हाँ, तो हमने तीन चीजों के बारे में बात की है. We have talked about three things बेटा. जो पहली चीज हमने बोली है वो ये है that whatever, जिस भी point पे हम उसको tend कर रहे हैं, wherever v tends to n, that n must be in the domain of the function. वो हमारी पहली चीज है. दूसरी हम बोल रहे हैं limit v tends to n q, it must exist. And जो लिमिट एग्जिस्ट करे, इट मस्ट बी इक्वल टू द वैल्यू g of n. ये तीनों ही चीजें हमारे लिए इंपॉर्टेंट है. ये तीनों ही चीजें होनी जरूरी है. राइट बेटा? ओके, नाउ let us go ahead and let us try to think of some examples of continuity and discontinuity, and accordingly you can understand these questions. ठीक है बेटा? So question number 1. Let's say that q is equal to gv. ये आपको एक फंक्शन दिया हुआ है 4v square upon v square plus 1. This is the function given to you and it is said that it is defined, where it is defined from minus infinity to infinity. ठीक है? अब suppose it says that check continuity of function as v tends to n. तो ध्यान से समझो बेटा. बेटा व्हाट इज द डोमेन ऑफ द फंक्शन? कहाँ डिफाइंड है ये? हर वैल्यू पे, फ्रॉम माइनस इंफिनिटी टू इंफिनिटी, हर वैल्यू पे ये डिफाइंड है. So if it is defined for every value, then n तो एक number ही होगा कोई ना between minus infinity to infinity. So if this is defined for every value, then I can say it will be defined for n also. अगर हर value के लिए defined है, तो उन values में से ही एक value तो n रही होगी. It is defined for all values from minus infinity to infinity. Bhai, if they would have said that, beta, if they would have said domain is 0 to 10, then मेरा thought जाता कि what if n is 11, what if n is 12, what if n is 15? ऐसा तो नहीं बोला है. They have said it is defined for all values minus infinity to infinity. तो इसमें तो n की कोई भी value ले लो. You take any value of n, it will be defined. So n is within the domain. ये हमें clear हो गया है that n is within the domain. Then beta second point, does the limit exist? So beta, how did we check whether the limit existed or not existed? बहुत simple था. You could have checked from left hand side and right hand side. तो negative side से approach करो और positive side से approach करो. If you go to the same value, then limit exists. Then limit exists. तो यहाँ पर, if you have just remembered what I did in the previous lectures, clearly it is visible that the limit of the function will exist. Negative side से and positive side से you will go ahead and you will get the same value. So the limit of the function exists. But what is the limit of the function? उसकी value क्या होगी? What will be that value? So in order to go ahead and do that, I must check the value. मैंने क्या लिखा? Limit v tends to n and मैंने वहां पर अपना function डाल दिया. So what is my function, beta? My function is given to me as 4v square upon v square plus 1. Can I apply the quotient rule here? हाँ, limits में हमने अभी quotient rule सीखा है. What does the quotient rule in limit says? That limit can distribute separately to the numerator and to the denominator. तो separately हम distribute कर देते हैं. So limit v tends to n 4v square upon limit v tends to n v square plus 1. तो बेटा ये क्या हो जाएगा? 4. Instead of v, I will put n square upon n square plus 1. तो ये हो गया 4n square upon n square plus 1. But isn't this equal to gn? अगर मैं इस function में directly v की जगह पे n लगा देती तो भी यही आता. ये तो बेटा limit की theorem से आया. But if I would have simply plugged n in this function, then also I would have got the same thing only, na? So I can say that this is equal to gn. So all my properties are satisfied. 1, n is in the domain. 2, limit exists. 3, it is equal, that limit is equal to the value of the function at n. So we can say that the function is continuous. But I will take one more example. Example number 2. This will require some practice. You have to practice it with me. सिर्फ तभी समझ में आएगा. Okay, beta. So I will take one more example here. So supposedly the function given to you, it is beta v cube plus v square minus 4v minus v upon v square minus 4, right? And it is asking you that check whether this function is continuous or not, right? It is asking you check whether this function is continuous or not. तो क्या करना है? At what values? So limit v tends to 2, evaluate the function q. क्या function evaluate करना है बेटा? Limit v tends to 2, evaluate the function q. तो क्या आ जाएगा बेटा? Limit v tends to 2, 2 cube plus 2 square minus 4 into 2 minus 4 upon 2 square minus 4. So beta, this will be 8 plus 4 minus 8 minus 4 upon 4 minus 4. right beta? So if I just solve this, I will get 0 by 0 form. So this function is giving me a 0 by 0 form, and since I'm getting a 0 by 0 form, it implies that this function is not defined at v is equal to 2. जब v2 होगा तो ये फंक्शन की लिमिट एग्जिस्ट नहीं कर रही है. It is giving me a 0 by 0 form. So the function is not defined, right? अब बहुत ध्यान से समझनी मेरी बात को, बहुत ध्यान से. Listen to me very carefully. बेटा, my function was v cube plus v square minus 4v minus 4 upon v square minus 4 limit v tends to 2. If I go ahead and I try to solve this function a bit, beta, isme se if I take this v common, v square common, I will get 4v plus 1. And isme se if I take 4 common, minus 4, I will get v plus 1 upon, this is the formula of a square minus b square. So that is nothing but a minus b into a plus b. So beta, it will be v minus 2 into v plus 2. तो क्या हो जाएगा? v square minus 4 into v plus 1 upon v minus 2 into v plus 2. Actually, करने की जरूरत भी नहीं है. We can just keep the denominator as it is. v square minus 4. Here also I will just keep it as beta v square minus 4. This will cancel out. So I will be left up with just v plus 1. Now if I check its limit, it will give me 3. So listen to me. Limit exists. क्योंकि मैंने इस फंक्शन को ब्रेक डाउन किया और उसके बाद जो इसकी वैल्यू आई वो डिफाइंड आई. सो लिमिट ऑफ द फंक्शन इज एग्जिस्टिंग, बट द वैल्यू ऑफ द फंक्शन एट 2, वो तो एक्चुअल फंक्शन में चेक करेंगे ना बेटा. द वैल्यू ऑफ द फंक्शन एट 2, बेटा, दैट इज कमिंग 0 by 0. So even though the limit exists, the value is not defined at that point for the function, original function, right? Original function. And even if you say that, okay, ma'am, I think that the value can be defined, 0 by 0 is not defined. And how do I know? Usse bhi important ek point. The point is that beta 2 and minus 2 are not in the domain of the function. Whenever we have a rational number, जब भी हमारे पास एक rational number होता है, तो rational number क्या होता है? Anything in the p by q format, q not equal to 0. Denominator should not be equal to 0. But beta, here my denominator is v square minus 4. I don't want it to be equal to 0. So v square should not be equal to 4. So v cannot be equal to plus minus 2. So this function is defined for all values except plus minus 2. Except plus minus 2. So if this is not in the domain itself, this function cannot be continuous. But at the same time, you have to try to understand कि बेटा क्योंकि finally मैं एक limit में answer निकाल पाई हूँ. This is not given in the book, this thing, but it is called as removable discontinuity. हम इसकी discontinuity को जो 0 by 0 form था उसको हटा पाए. So it becomes a removable discontinuity. I want to write this down. This is very important. So please write it with me, beta, that this function, which is, it is not defined. When is this not defined, beta? At v is equal to 2 and v is equal to minus 2. Why? Because these values are not in the domain of the function. ये values function के domain में ही नहीं है. They are not in the domain of the function. So although limit exists, v tends to 2, q की limit exist कर रही है, I am getting the answer as 3. Similarly, when you will tend limit v tends to -2, v plus 1 करोगे, you will get -2 plus 1, that means -1. So limit is existing, but the function ka value is not in the domain itself. -2 and 2 are not in the domain. So if they are not in the domain, then I cannot say that the function is continuous. Ye clear ho gayi ye baat ekdam? Okay. Now beta, I want you to go ahead and I want you to do one more numerical with me. So this is from the back exercise of this AC Chiang. Okay. So you are given that Q is equal to GV, and this is defined as V square minus 7V minus 3. Kya questions hai beta? Part A. Find limit of Q as V tends to N. Second, check whether it is equal to GN. Beta, this is exercise 2, huh? Question number 2. And third, check continuity. करके देखते हैं एक बारी. So check limit of Q as V tends to N. तो कैसे करेंगे? Limit V tends to N GV. GV. What is that beta? This function. So limit V tends to N V square minus 7V minus 3. What rule will you use? I have already explained you polynomial rules, na? Polynomial rule of limit today. So beta, just distribute the limit. Limit V tends to N V square minus limit V tends to N 7V minus limit V tends to N 3. So beta, ये हो जाएगा N square. Instead of V, put N. Minus, this will be 7N. Minus, this is a constant. इसकी limit as it is रहेगी 3. ठीक है. Now beta, what is the function given to you? So this is first part. Second part, what is the function given to you? Function is given to you as V square minus 7V minus 3. So second part क्या बोल रहा है? Check what will be GN. So instead of V, मुझे N लिखना होगा हर जगह पे. So if instead of V I write N everywhere, what will I get? N square minus 7V minus 3. Are these two the same? Yes. So limit exists. Then beta, limit is equal to the value of the function. And N is in the domain. ये function हर value के लिए defined होगा. It's a general function. There is nothing in the denominator. ये एक polynomial function है. It should be defined for all values of N. So beta, N is in the domain. Limit is existing. Value of limit is equal to that at N. All three properties are satisfied. So is it a continuous function? It is a continuous function. It is a continuous function. Homework. From these back exercises, you have to do question 3 and question 4. Everyone will do question number 3 and question number 4 because this is very important and it will come in exam. ये तीनों चीजें ही check करनी होंगी. Next class I will come up with some extra questions, exercise questions. So better for now you have to check all these 3 things. क्या क्या check करना है? N should be in the domain. Limit of the function should exist and it should be equal to the value of the function at N. ठीक है? Okay, beta. Thank you.